I want to show one of the most underrated yet incredibly powerful features in Make.com that will genuinely make your automations 10 times more scalable and efficient. It is something known as the mapping function. And if you've ever worked with large datasets before, especially scraping data like profiles, hashtags, user inputs, you probably faced this problem, right? Like how do you split, filter, and manipulate the data dynamically without writing code or unnecessary extra steps? So that is exactly where this function known as mapping comes into play. So let me give you the exact problem we're trying to solve over here first. So as you can see in this Airtable database or our TikTok data extraction system, we're pulling in a long list of inputs where as we can see, they could either be profiles or they could be hashtags in this case. It's a long list and here's the challenge, right? So this is the exact scraper we're using in this case, where we're using the Appify TikTok data scraper and it can handle both hashtags as we can see over here and a list of profiles. But it needs to be passed into it separately in the form of an array as we can see. But in our database, if we come back over here, we can see that the data, it's all mixed up. We have a long list and of hashtags and profiles all jumbled up together. Now the naive approach over here would be to either manually split this data or run the scraper twice, one for hashtags and one for profiles. But that is inefficient, right? Because number one, it wastes time, operations, and it is just bad automation architecture and design as a whole. And this is exactly why the map function in Make.com is so powerful. It allows us to take an array where you can think of it like a bucket full of different items and selectively pull out of it exactly what we want and dynamically without lifting a finger. So let me show you how this works visually. So that would make the most sense. So if we give this a run over here, we can see that we get a long list of an array where in this case, as we can open them up and we see we have the usernames and the profiles mixed up but being returned in the same array. But in our case, what we want from the full array is we want the hashtags as we saw separately and we want the profiles separately, which we saw over here in the TikTok data scraper. So really what we want to be thinking about the map function is, let's say from A, I want B where C is equal to D. So in this case, A is going to be the array which we have in this case, which has been returned by this array aggregator. And what we want B is in this case, the hashtag or the profile name, where C is equal to D. So how that would map out over here if we see is in this case, let's open this up. So out of this array, which is over here being returned to us, we want the username, which in this case is content creator gear, where the type is equal to hashtags. So if we give the scenario a run, where we can see where we actually are using the map function. As we can see, we're putting in the array over here, which in this case is in the example, they've shown it as the emails, just for the sake of examples. But in our case, we're putting in the array and extracting the hashtag or the username. And let's take a look at the output and let's open it up. And as we can see, we're getting every single thing over here. We're not separating it by either a hashtag or a profile. So if we were to pass this directly into the JSON for the TikTok scraper, it wouldn't run because we would have to either separate the profiles and the hashtags separately, or we would end up having to run the scraper twice. So what we want to be doing instead is come over to this scenario, as we can see, where we have the exact same array being returned. And let's come back over here and give this a run. Where once again, we can see in the array, we're being returned a long list of an array with different profiles and hashtags. But in this case, what we do is number one, as we can see, we separate using the map function. As I said, from A, we want B, where C is equal to D. So over here, we're getting the array and we're getting the hashtag or username out of it, where type is equal to profile. And we do the exact same thing over here. But in this case, what we're doing is we're getting where type is equal to hashtag. So if we give this a run in this case now, and let's give it a run, as we can see, when we get the actual profile, now we can see it's a lot shorter, right? We can see we're getting Kale Junkie, Jazzy Leon, I'm Never Full, and Derek Chen. And let's come back to the Airtable database. As we can see, these four usernames exactly match with the profile. And if we come back over here now to hashtags, we can see if we open it up, we're only getting the hashtags, which in this case is productivity tools, content creator gear, desk setup, where if we come back and double check once again, we can see that we have now successfully gotten a JSON object, or an array in this case, of the profiles being separated and the hashtags. So this instantly creates two separate arrays with one of them being the profiles and the hashtags, and now we can directly pass them separately into the Appify scraper, as we see over here once we connect it, where now we are complying with the exact input style that they want, where in this case it is hashtag separately and the profiles. So we can now directly run this in one run in an automated fashion with no duplication, no manual cleanup, and no wasted operations, more importantly. So it's actually using these small and nifty little tricks in make.com where you can really start scaling your automations. So where these small but really powerful functions like map, for instance, allows you to build real operational infrastructure. So instead of building automations that break the moment the data changes a little bit or it grows all of a sudden, you're not just automating now, but you're building like proper digital infrastructure. And one small note I actually want to be making about an array over here in case of map is that we only want to be using it if we give this a run in this case. As we can see, we're being returned an array over here. And map functions only work on arrays. So if you try to use it on collections, objects, or non-array structures, it's going to break and fail. So the golden rule is to always make sure that your data is structured in an array before we're using it in the map function. And the best way to actually understand this better is that if we click into this, we come over here, we can see that make already gives us different functions for working with with different arrays. As we can see, we have the map function over here. Out of these functions, the map function, the join function, the length, the contains, the toArray are ones that I use pretty often, and the ones that I would say are really, really useful. And once again, the best mnemonic or way to understand how the mapping function works is that from A, I want B, where C is equal to D. So in this case, this is exactly what we're doing. Where one final time, if we come back to the Airtable database, we can see that we're getting an array of all the hashtags and usernames where we want to be getting only the specific profiles where the type is equal to either a profile or a hashtag. And that's how we separate them. And that's how we enter them into the TikTok data scraper. So yeah, I hope this was helpful and cheers.